Welcome to the Counselling Tutor Podcast, the must-listen-to podcast for students of counselling and psychotherapy. Here are your hosts, Rory Lees-Oakes and Ken Kelly.
Hello and welcome to the Counselling Tutor Podcast. I'm Rory and with me is my erstwhile colleague and all things therapeutic, Ken. How are you, Ken?
I'm excited, Rory, but beyond excitement, I'm bouncing. You can probably hear it in my voice. I really am, because this is not just an episode of the Counselling Tutor Podcast. This is episode 100 of the Counselling Tutor Podcast, and a great episode. You're going to get a lot of value from this. We're going to start off chatting about owning your success. We're going to kind of mirror that, Rory, I guess, against imposter syndrome, feeling like you don't belong, and using your success to kind of balance that out. And Practice Matters today, we're going to be looking at celebrations in the therapy room. We're keeping the theme to celebratory nature with it being the 100th episode. And Rory, we were chatting about this. Stuff that's brought into the therapy room, it's not always dark, heavy material. There are celebrations, I guess.
Absolutely. A lot of people think that counselling is, into really heavy stuff, and sometimes it can be. You're dealing with the reality of people's lives. But, don't forget that sometimes we celebrate with clients when they move, they have a movement or a light bulb moment, or leave us and go on to the world happier than when they came in. And I'm going to be talking about celebrations, and I'm going to give you some reflections from my own practice of why clients celebrate, and as more to the point, as therapists, how we celebrate with them.
Like it. And to keep in the theme of celebration, and this being our 100th episode, we're going to be closing today's episode speaking about the 100 hours, the 100 hours of placement that are required, certainly on most of the courses in the United Kingdom. And we're going to be delving a little bit into that. But just to start us off, owning your success. What's your ideas on this, Rory?
Well, I could give you an example. I spoke to someone recently who said, I've had a client and they've gone off into the world and they're a lot happier and they thanked me and I said, that's really good. And I said, and well done for you for facilitating that. And it came back, I really didn't do anything. And I said, well, hang on, they didn't sit in a room on their own for 8 weeks or 10 weeks. And I said, sometimes we just have to celebrate our own successes. And I think sometimes for some of us, it's quite difficult. And I think that we should, I think therapists should take ownership of the work they do. But I fear that some just don't, Ken.
Celebrating success. I mean, there's that word selfish that sometimes comes out, isn't there? And when we celebrate our successes, there's sometimes a little feeling inside that says that we shouldn't do that. But when it comes to worrying about whether we're good enough, or we're happy to spend our time there, when we and the same is true of receiving compliments. I recognize it within myself, Rory, and as part of my personal development. When a compliment comes my way, I receive it with thanks and a bit of a smile, but I want to put it down and get it out the way quickly. But if somebody wants to share a concern or a problem with me, or something that I may have done wrong or said to offend them, then I will dwell on that and really delve deep into that. So we're talking about owning your successes. And with this being 100th episode of the Counselling Tutor Podcast, I thought that I'd just take you for a walk, Rory. You and, of course, you, our listener, for a walk over the last 100 episodes. So the first ever Counselling Tutor Podcast went out in January 2016. So at the time of making this recording, we're kind of at the end of January 2019. So it's 3 years that podcast has been out. And the podcast has had over 600,000 downloads. That's a number that I struggled to get my head around. So I looked around a bit, and it's about the population of Glasgow. Go to every single person in Glasgow. It's like every person in Glasgow downloading the podcast and having a listen to that. So that's the kind of number that has happened over the last 3 years. Counsellingtutor.com, that's our main website. Since episode 1 of Counselling Tutor Podcast to episode 100, it's been upgraded and rebuilt 3 times, and it's been done like that to keep up with the changing user trends and tech changes, people going from computers to more mobile use, and we've improved the security on that as well. Counsellingtutor.com has delivered over 2 million free resources. 2 million resources. That's bits of content, videos on our website, downloads from our website, articles on our website, and that's to people all around the world. And during the time from episode 1 to episode 100, we saw the birth of the Counselling Study Resource, which we call the CSR. And the Counselling Study Resource came about because many students asked us for something more comprehensive. So we made a paid-for service, which is called the Counselling Study Resource. And since that started, we've had 2 rebuilds of the Counselling Study Resource and a hefty, eye-watering investment from Rory and myself, again, into improving the learning experience and the tech on that. The team that runs Counselling Tutor has grown from Rory and I that started it, and we now have a team of 7 professionals that are scattered all around the world that bring their expertise, anything from finances to academic writing. We introduced under Rory's directorship as academic director, an academic writer and researcher who creates resources based on feedback from you, our audience, what we see in our Facebook group. And speaking about the Facebook group, today the group has over 20,000 active members, and that makes it the largest Facebook pay group in the world dedicated to the study and practice of counselling. The biggest in the world, Rory. During this time, I overcame my own dyslexia, my own barrier, and I finally got down to writing a book because I love counselling skills. The book called Basic Counselling Skills, a Student Guide. The book has helped thousands of counselling students from around the world, and it's rated a bestseller on Amazon with 81% 5-star ratings. So that's kind of a little bit about the company, but that's not what this has been built on. It's not important. This is all about how you have grown, our listeners, how the audience has grown over the last 100 episodes. I personally, Rory, have received over 30,000 emails from students and qualified counsellors from all around the world. Together, we've celebrated thousands of I've finished my 100 hours of placement. Those celebrations we've celebrated. We've celebrated thousands of graduations of students that have moved on and progressed on their courses. And because of Counselling Tutor, this is what's available today. If you need help, advice, a shoulder to cry on, someone to celebrate with you, someone who understands the process of studying to become and being a counsellor, then you'll find all of this playing out daily within our Facebook group. And that's not because of you and I, Rory. It's because of you listening to this right now, our community. Being there for one another, that is called community. And I believe that that's the biggest celebration of all. We've created a thriving community of like-minded students, counsellors, supervisors, researchers and students who support and cheer for each other. New people entering the profession today or studying to practice counselling have somewhere to belong, and that's because of you, our audience, making Counselling Tutor what it is. So that's me writing down and owning a little bit of our success and your success listening to this for the last 100 episodes.
Well, it's when you put it like that, what a distance travelled, Ken. What an absolute distance travelled. And you know, when we started the webpage, I think it was in 2012 or 2013. We couldn't have envisaged, I don't think, where we are now. And in fact, I left my full-time teaching position, teaching counselling, to become a full-time employee of Counselling Tutor. And I too get, my mailbag, people saying, wow, thank you for the resources. And, when it comes to owning our own success, I think that me and you, Ken, we've changed the way that counselling students engage resources electronically forever. we've changed the face of counselling teaching to some extent.
I love that. I love what you say there. See, I think this is part of owning your success. If you document it, if you write down what you've done, when you're feeling that level of, oh, do I really belong here? Should I really be here? Go and take a moment to sit down and write your roadway. Where did you start? What made you decide you wanted to become a counsellor? What route did you take? What were the obstacles that you overcame along that road? Because they have brought you to where you are today, and they are your successes that you can celebrate, and they give you that kind of pass, that ticket to be where you are today. And I agree with you, Rory. I mean, we brought a different way of kind of learning, and not because we are clever and not because we are particularly talented, but because of one thing and one thing only. It's because we keep our ears open and we listen to you, because most of what Counselling Tutor is today has been directed by you, our listeners. You tell us in our Facebook group. If you're not a member of the Facebook group and you're listening to this, get yourself in there. You just go onto Facebook, put in the word Counselling Tutor. That's 2 L's in counselling, because we're based in the UK. Come and join the group, and you're going to see what I'm talking about in terms of community. But everything that we have built only on your suggestions, with you saying, this is what I'm struggling with, this is what I don't believe there's enough of. And we're still listening. And, that's 100 episodes. I'll be interested to look back when we're at 150 or 200 episodes, because I know what we've got planned for the future. We're not going to go into that now, but man, there's lots to look forward to. So you're in the right place. If you're a student of counselling, you're in the right place. We're going to help you to kind of reduce the stress levels as you go through your assignments and get through your studies. If you're a qualified counsellor, stick around. We've got some really good CPD resources coming your way as well. So lots planned, but lots to celebrate.
Absolutely, and it's great. Ken and myself are humbled and overjoyed. I think I can speak for Ken in this, because we've spoken a lot about it in equal measure, about how you, the audience, or the listener, as we like to call you, the listener, has taken Counselling Tutor to your heart and used the resources, and it's just incredible. And as Ken said, I'd echo what Ken said. The ideas come from you. People regularly email me saying, have you done something on this? Have you done something on that? Can you explain a little bit more about this? And we happily do it, because we know that's what you want. That's what you want, to help you with your journey and to celebrate your success. It's all about you and your journey. Definitely.
I like it, 100%. So how do you own your success? What do you do? So there's an example of kind of putting down your journey and then looking at something called imposter syndrome. You don't have to look far on Google if you type in the word imposter syndrome to see what that's about. It basically says it's kind of that feeling you get of, am I good enough? I shouldn't really be here. Everyone's better than me. I don't deserve this. Those are kind of thoughts and feelings that may come up in imposter syndrome. And it's pretty common for us as human beings to kind of default to that way of thinking. It's born of interjected values, conditions of worth. You are more worthy if you look at the base theories, that's going to give you that. And understanding the base theories, even practicing the base theories, doesn't make you immune to feeling them yourself. And one way of kind of combating that in imposter syndrome is to have a written list of your achievements, of the road that you have walked, of the CPD that you have done. I mean, just passing your counselling course, passing just an assignment, it's a celebration. And my question is, how do you celebrate it? Because we hear all the time on the Facebook page, I'm going to take an assignment as an example. I've got an assignment coming up. I'm really worried. I'm really concerned. My stomach's in a knot. So we spend a lot of time on the negative side. But when that assignment comes back, if that is passed, if they say, yes, you got it, that's the stuff you need, do you celebrate, or do you just go, oh, I'm glad that's over? Owning your success is celebrating in equal measure to the worry. Celebrating. What do? Buy yourself a nice counselling book. Go out for a meal. Go and have a cup of coffee. Go and shout and celebrate it in the Counselling Tutor Facebook group. We want to hear about it. We want to share it. And because we're all like-minded and we've been through the same kind of road, we get it. We really do.
We do. And even just walking through the door on that first level 2 course and finishing the first lesson, that's a celebration. The journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first step.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, well, it's not me that, Ken. It's Confucius. So
We'll have to get him on the podcast and interview him, Rory. I like that.
I've got to say that. But yeah, and you should celebrate. You should. Selfish, as I always say, and I've said for a long time, and any former students listening to me will know my mantra: selfish gets a bad press. Really, it's okay to put yourself first and to celebrate and say, "Oh wow, I've done this," and it's not an easy kind of thing to do. Training counselling. I was speaking to someone yesterday, and they said the difference between psychology and counselling is psychology is studying a mountain, and counselling's climbing the flipping thing.
Yeah,
and it's a very tough. It's a very tough journey, and those who complete it at any level, doesn't matter if it's 2 or 3 or 4 or degree or masters or PhD, you should celebrate. You should own that and say, "I've done that. I've achieved." And and if you're one of those people, then go and have a little dance.
I like that. I can see people dancing now, Rory, as we're talking. I can hear the dancing across the world as people are listening to. I liked your metaphor of the climbing a mountain. So what is it you say? Psychology is like studying the mountain, and studying counselling is climbing the mountain. I love that, and I'm going to just bathe in that metaphor just for a moment. When you're climbing a mountain, you've got your face to a cold, hard rock face for most of the time. And if all you do is stay with your face to the rock face as you're climbing up, you'll be tired, demotivated. But if you take a time every now and again to just turn around and look at the view and celebrate how far you've come, it makes the journey all the easier. And it's kind of on yourself as well. So that is our topic on owning your success. And we've certainly celebrating our success with you today.
Just one final thing before we move on, Ken. I'm not suggesting anybody who's driving listening to the podcast starts dancing. That could be dangerous.
So only in the UK do you get health and safety warnings at that level.
Yes, many states.
There will be yellow tape around this episode when it goes out. So moving away from owning our success, and we're looking at sticking with the subject of celebration, but we're looking at celebrations in the therapy room, maybe celebrations that we will share with a client, Rory.
Absolutely, and I think that sharing is that's the key word. You've hit on it. A lot of people say, "Oh, it's a client who's done that," and yes, it is. But you've walked. If you're in practice, you've walked with that client. You've been there for them. You may have even kind of emotionally held them through very, very difficult times. And when a client finishes therapy and they feel that they've moved on, that they've personally grown, and they thank you for it, they're thanking you for being on that journey. And I think it's a little incongruent not to take that and say, well, thank you for your kind words, because as I said earlier, the person isn't sitting in a room on their own. So in Practice Matters, I'm going to be talking just a little bit about some of the celebrations through therapy that I've witnessed, and my own kind of view on it, really. A little bit of introspection, Ken.
That's Practice Matters with Rory after this short message. Take the stress out of your counselling studies and get the support of Rory and I by joining us in the Counselling Study Resource. See how Counselling Study Resource can help you. Visit counsellingtutor.com. That's counsellingtutor.com.
Many years ago, I interviewed a student for a place on a Level 4 Diploma in Counselling course. At the conclusion of the interview, I asked if she had any questions. Just one, she replied. Do we have any fun in training? I replied we did, echoing my belief that when people are happy, they generally learn more. I inquired why she had asked. She told me that she'd been for an interview with another training provider, and the reply to her question had been, there's no fun in therapy. Well, it's true that as therapists we tend to hear difficult, sad or even frightening stories from our clients. We're also there to celebrate their achievements, to joyfully acknowledge when they have made real and positive changes in their lives, and recognise the end of the journey together when we metaphorically wave them goodbye with goodwill and love as they continue on life's path. Celebrations can take place when a client feels they have left past burdens behind, or they free themselves from a phobia or a fear, Or maybe a client who's regained his or her self-esteem. Or when a client can own they were not to blame for the abuse. It's not their fault. Keep in mind the following points when celebrating with a client. Work from their frame of reference. Reflect on how far they have come and what changes you see. Acknowledge their courage in facing life's difficulties. If it's the client's last session, wish them well on the journey ahead. Finally, remember to celebrate your role in the client's journey. This should take place in supervision or perhaps a case discussion group. Celebrating our achievements can offset the impact of hearing very difficult material and is an essential part of self-care.
Thank you as always, Rory. And of course, you can get Rory's super duper handout from today's episode by visiting our website. That is counsellingtutor.com, 2 L's in the word counselling because we're based in the UK. Counsellingtutor.com, top of the page, you're going to see a little tab that says podcast. Click on that. All of our past podcasts, all 100 episodes are there. So some time can be spent going over past episodes. But if you click on episode 100, you'll see the show notes for today. Any links that we've mentioned will be in those show notes. And right there on that page, you can download Rory's super duper handout from within the page. And of course, if you are already a member of our paid for part of Counselling Tutor, which is called the Counselling Study Resource, well, that handout has already been added to your Counselling Study Resource. So you just log in and there it is for you. But moving on, staying with the topic of 100, talking about hitting 100 client hours, Rory.
Yes. So for those of you who are thinking, what is Ken talking about? Those people who do practice-based courses, usually a level 4 here in the UK or above, so level 4, level 5 degree, master's degree, and they're practice-based courses. In other words, part of the course is seeing clients and being supervised. Usually there's an element of hours that you work with the client that goes towards your qualification. And the minimum that you can have to qualify these courses is 100. Some courses have more, 120, 150. In some cases, I've heard 200. But 100 hours, that's 100 face-to-face, 1 hour counselling sessions with adult clients. It can be different with children. The different awarding bodies have different rules. If you're counselling children, sometimes you can claim just half an hour. But generally speaking, it's 100 hours. And to get that, the client has to turn up, has to have an hour of therapy, and it has to be signed off. And as we know, and as those people who are doing their placements will know, sometimes clients don't turn up. Sometimes you have a bit of a drought where your referrer doesn't refer you any clients and time's ticking away. And you're slowly writing those hours in, and you think, I wish I could put the did not attends in and finish this part first. And eventually you get to 99 and your next client comes in and you finish that client hour, 100 client hours, and that part of your course is done. It's finished. It's completed. I know. I can remember doing mine, and it's like, oh, wow, that's this part done now. You know, I continued afterwards, but it was a mark in the sand that bit of the work is done. It can be put away, and now I can do other things and move towards graduation. So if you're out there and you're chipping away at your client's hours, or even you're getting really near to the end, you know, make sure that when you hit 100, you have some form of celebration. Doesn't matter, you could have a cup of tea, you know, you could have a bit of a dance, you could do something, but make sure you celebrate it, because it's a really important milestone and one that signifies that you're really on your way in your training.
I love it. It really keys into owning your success that we started with. It's taking that moment. It's a marker in time that is set by, I guess, the awarding bodies that want to see the 100 hours submitted with your final portfolio, your bit of work. So there is that celebration side of hitting 100 client hours, but there is also the flip side of that with students that are looking to get their 100 hours in, and from maybe clients not arriving, or maybe it took a while to get a placement, you may see that your peers, those on your course with you, are ahead of you. It's okay, even if the deadline to submit your work is looming and getting closer and closer and closer, it can cause panic. It can cause, I'm not going to make it to the finish line. How does it actually work with the submission, Rory, if you're not able to finish your 100 hours of client placement at the time of submission?
Yeah, it's a good point. So it depends on who your training provider is, and I'm only speaking about the UK here. So lots of awarding bodies, people like ABC Awards or CPCAB or AIM or BTEC, will give you a period of grace after you finish your formal studies. So you could finish in the June, and you could then catch up on your 100 hours and then submit sometime after in the future. I think with universities they give you 6 months, but that would depend on the university you're in. So the key thing there is to find out. There's a lot of anxiety around students saying, "Oh, if I don't get my 100 hours in by June, I won't pass." Well, that's not true. You can actually extend that, but you need to speak to if that's going to happen. You need to speak to your tutor sooner rather than later, and don't panic. Don't panic. You won't be on your own. That's the key thing. There are lots of people who finish after the course ends itself, and they just submit their hours and their portfolios later.
100%. In our Facebook group with our 20,000 plus members, this is a topic that comes up again and again and again. And if you go into the group and kind of just do a little bit of a search, on the left-hand side, there's a search bar in every Facebook group. And if you put in client hours, you'll see how many people discuss this topic. And it can bring up that level of anxiety. So thank you for that, Rory. If you're not going to make it, it's okay. There is a grace period around there. And then just on those 100 hours, while we've got the topic going here, what it basically means is 100 supervised hours. And you'd need to look to the ethical framework and to your course requirements to see what that level of supervision is, how often you need to go to supervision. But one of the tripping points, an area that you can fall over, is not noting the 100 hours correctly in the format required by the awarding body and putting the required supervision next to it. So just speak with your course tutor about how you are required to note down those 100 hours, because that is really important. They need to be signed off. In other words, they need to be evidenced like any other work that we're handing in a final portfolio. It needs to be evidenced by someone. It needs to be done in the correct manner to avoid that coming back, because that again can cause a whole load of anxiety of, they're saying I haven't done my 100 hours, where maybe you have. It's just not been put together in the way that they're asking for it. When those moderators are looking, that they haven't got time to look around to find the hours. They need to see it laid out in an easy way, because they maybe have dozens and dozens of assignments they need to make their way through. Absolutely, Ken.
And a couple of other tripping points. One is always make sure that, in the excitement of submitting your 100 hours, people sometimes hit the 100 hours, but don't have supervision. So they may have 99. They see the supervisor, and the next week they have 100, and they go, "Oh, I passed, great!" And then they submit it. If that 1 hour isn't supervised and it's not signed off by your supervisor, that 1 hour is usually removed, and that can be difficult. And remember that supervision ratios are usually within 31 days. So you have to have supervision within 31 days. So it's really best to check with the fine print. If you're not sure, contact your tutor or contact your awarding body, and that will tell you. A lot more detail nowadays, Ken. I've looked at the specifications, and they're a lot more detailed. They used to be quite woolly at one point.
Open to interpretation.
open to interpretation. They're not now. They've really tightened up. So check that out, because it could be really disappointing. You submit, and then they write back and say, well, that last hour wasn't supervised, wasn't signed off by a supervisor, so we're going to have to resubmit, I'm afraid.
I know. And it sounds so harsh, doesn't it? But it is a reality. Rory, you and I, we have tutored together. I don't know if that's the proper way. We taught together, and we've seen assignments referred. Not assignments referred. The portfolio sent back for 1 or 2 hours that kind of fell over the supervision. They're really strict on it. So it's worth just thinking of those tripping points, having another look over it. So if you've done your 100 hours, just read re-look over that. Make sure you are sure. Show it to a peer. Show it to your tutor. Say, is this right? Before handing that in. And as Rory says, and in the theme of today, when you've got those 100 hours, celebrate, dance, do something special and meaningful for you because you deserve it. You really do.
Absolutely. And that was the 100th hour of the Counselling Tutor podcast. We talked about imposter syndrome and owning your own success. And then I talked a little bit about success in the therapy room. And now we talked about 100 hours of client contact and celebrating that. So I'm not going to say, stay safe today. I'm going to say, have a celebration. Ooh. Find something, doesn't matter what it is. It might be a sandwich that's passed, and have a little celebration. And as for me and you, Ken, do you fancy a cup of tea?
I do. As you're speaking about the celebration, Rory, I can just see the chocolate sales going up around the world as this episode is downloaded. It's been a great episode. Thank you for celebrating our 100th episode with us. Just one small stat that I wanted to leave to the end. That's a statistic. I shouldn't use the shorthand, should I? When I mentioned that we've had the over 600,000 downloads of the Counselling Tutor podcast, I worked out how much listening time that is. Each episode's around about 35 to 37 minutes. It works out to over 20 years of continuous listening. 20 years, Rory. Day, night, not taking a break, over 20 years of consistent listening. That equals those 600. And that is because of you tuning in, listening, coming back time and time again. So thank you for celebrating our 100th episode. I have only one request. Please share this with other people on your course or peers, counselling peers. Get people to come and listen to the Counselling Tutor podcast because we grow only from you, our audience.
Yeah, share it with friends and let's get the party started.
Take the stress out of your counselling studies and get the support of Rory and I by joining us in the Counselling Study Resource. Counselling Study Resource, or CSR for short, is the world's most comprehensive assignment guidance and study support resource for students just like you of counselling and psychotherapy. See how Counselling Study Resource can help you. Visit counsellingtutor.com. That's counsellingtutor.com.
Thank you for listening to the Counselling Tutor podcast. Find the show notes for this episode on our website at www.counsellingtutor.com.